Have you ever found yourself overthinking and worrying about the future, stressed about your next steps, what school to go to, what classes to take, where to apply, what job to have? If so, this conversation is for you. This is a conversation I had with Megan, who's a former student of mine, and she's really, really been in your shoes of overthinking and worrying about the future. And over the years, she's come out on the other side of that in a really positive way to share with us what specific tools were helpful for her in having less overthinking and less worry about the future over time. And she's really in a much more stable place in her life right now. And I'm so grateful that she had this conversation to share with you what's been helpful for her. So, before we get there, I just want you to know too that if you are struggling with overthinking and worrying about the future, and if you're wanting help with those, please know that as a psychologist, I do have a signature anxiety program that can help you. It's designed to help you as a teen or a college student move forward with the next steps in your education, with your friendships, and with your future in a way where you don't have to be held back by waiting or missing out or even being held back by the mental health system itself. And so, for that reason, it's entirely an online program that you can do at your own pace. You don't have to be on a waiting list or have appointments or scheduling or Zoom calls or anything like that. And it's me taking all of the tools, skills, and strategies that I've taught young people in my 20 plus years of doing therapy with them and putting all of that into the program so that you can learn those directly from me instantaneously. So if that's you and you need that help, check out the link in the description and in the pinned comment below. The first step is a free training for your parents. You can also watch it yourself, share it with them, and enroll in the program. So without further ado, here's the conversation with Megan. Hi, Megan. Welcome to the channel. Thank you for being with us here today. And I always start these conversations with my little ethical spiel that you and I are just having a conversation as two human persons. Mm-hmm. And so grateful for everyone who's watching, who's joining us. And although I am a psychologist and I've been doing therapy with teens and college students for more than 20 years, Megan is not my therapy client. This is not a therapy thing. This is just a conversation. So thanks for being here, Megan.
Of course. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. And we decided we would start just with like how we know each other, which is that you were my psychology student back in my professor days.
Yes.
And right before I hit record, we were just chatting about how, you know, from my perspective, you were such a high achieving, excellent student. And from your perspective, there was a lot beneath that was really difficult. And why don't we start there? What was that like for you in college?
Yeah, I definitely was high achieving. That's true. I had 1 A minus. It still haunts me.
Oh my God. Wait a minute.
I know.
Scandalous.
I know.
Man, the whole internet is gonna see this.
I know.
What did you get an A minus in?
Intro to Cultural Anthropology.
Oh, how good.
Dr. Ayers. So if you're watching, I did not achieve perfection. It was 1 A minus short. I think I found a lot of my self-worth from academics, from being smart and being able to test well and write well and all of that. So because I had my self-worth wrapped up in it so much, I think that added to the anxiety around scoring well, being well liked by professors, all of that. And growing up, I had a lot of depression and anxiety, and that carried into college. And so I feel like the the like school anxiety of making sure I was the best um, was kind of heightened by that depression and anxiety that I had to start with. It just kind of added on top of it. Um, and then it became kind of like a double-edged sword too, of like feeling better about myself if I scored well, um, because at least I was good at that. um, and so it was all kind of wrapped up in it. And then it was one of those things where like it wasn't just about like the classes. I had a lot of anxiety about the future, um, of where am I going to go to grad school? Am I going to get in? What happens if I don't get into grad school? What am I going to do? What job will I get? Just a lot of like stuff that made it a lot harder on myself than it needed to be. Like, I went into Vanguard not knowing what I wanted to major in. And so, like, that first year, I had anxiety about what am I going to major in? What if I don't know? um, and I had come in basically as a sophomore because I had AP credits from high school, and Vanguard took all of the ones I had. I know some schools don't. Um, and so then I was like, I have less time to decide. um, and so that just started there. And then it was okay. I like psychology. I really like the brain part of it. What am I going to do with that after? Because therapy seems like a much easier route of like you, you get into your grad program and then you become a therapist. And it just seemed like simpler steps to me. Whether it is or isn't, I know. um,
It's
but
a more set path with like these
yeah,
defined milestones. Yeah.
yeah. Whereas I was like, I don't know what I want to do with the brain. I just like the brain and not therapy so much. And so then I was really thinking long term in the future when I absolutely did not need to be, and it added a lot of anxiety. So.
Okay. So many important lessons in what you're saying. And, there's a major, very painful theme here of your self worth getting tied up in
Mhm.
the system. And sadly, this is kind of how the system works, right? In education, it's like the points and the evaluation and the approval and the evil professors. Um,
I never thought you guys were evil.
oh, okay. Just bad people, but not evil, right? Just kidding. I'm just trying to make you laugh because it's painful, but um, I definitely see how that happens, right? We get our wires crossed that
Mhm.
our self worth is somehow dependent upon how we are evaluated or the points that we gain in this gamified system. I'm still a little horrified that you got an A minus. I can't believe it.
I know. It's scandalous, like you said.
This is so scandalous. The whole internet is gonna know. It's gonna be all over Reddit. It's
I
gonna be all
know.
over
I
TikTok.
know. It was very brave of me.
It was. It was a vulnerable moment. I admire your courage. Um, but there's a million things that we can worry about in high school,
Hmm.
going into college, and there's a million things we can worry about in college as well.
Hmm.
And something that's really difficult is that because you are such an intelligent person who is trying to plan and think ahead for the future, it's almost like that opens so many doors of things to worry about. And then this like irony too of like you had AP credits, which knocked a year off, which on paper looks awesome, but
And
it
money
sounds
wise.
like, and money wise, it probably saved you, well, a year of tuition, right? But stress wise, it sounds like you were looking at it as like, I have this foreshortened, instead of 4 years, I have 3 years
Hmm.
to figure out my major. When you said that you were thinking about the future and the long term a lot more than you needed to, what did you mean by that?
Thinking about, for me, thinking about, you know, 5 years out while I was still in a program taking classes. Now it seems like that was just kind of an unneeded stressor because I was doing what I needed to do, taking classes. And nothing I did right then was going to affect me 5 years later. I was still, trying in school. And I think at that point, that's the most I could do. I didn't need to overthink how one thing would affect me 5 years down the line or anything like that. I could only focus on the next step. And I think if I had just focused on the next step or being in the present moment, even though that's much easier to say now than back then, right?
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
it would have been such a stress relief.
Yeah. Because you would have been able to just zone in on the present moment
Hmm.
and what is like the one next step.
Yeah. And I think I missed out on a lot of happy moments because I wasn't in the moment. I was always looking forward.
Mhm.
And so I think, if I had been more present in the moment and less worried about the future, um, I probably could have had a lot more fun.
Oh, the F word. Fun. Okay. This has become such a controversial episode. There's an A minus. There's the F word.
I know.
YouTube is totally going to
Yeah.
just censor the heck out of this video. Yeah. So there's a lot of pressure in college, some of which I find is kind of a hidden riptide of having to think about the future.
Hmm.
And the downside of that is what you're saying about like not being able to be present in the moment or have fun with just being in college, right? And enjoying it, dare I say. Um, this idea of thinking 5 years into the future, was that something that was coming from inside of you? Was it coming from other people? Was it coming from society? Like, where was that coming from?
A lot of it was coming from within myself and just view of society. I didn't get pressure from my family or friends to have everything figured out. Um, they were very supportive and were like, "You're so smart. You could do anything." That kind of thing. They weren't expecting me to have all the answers. I was because I like that certainty. I don't like having, you know, the uncertainty, unresolved things. And then I felt like there was pressure from society about always knowing what's next, about having a plan, about having a backup plan. And for me, I had a lot of friends that did really well in school in that they knew what they wanted to do. They wanted to be a doctor, and a lot of them now are doctors, and that's great. Um, but they had their plan and they knew what they wanted, and so I saw them getting into their programs, and I was like, I don't really know, and that stressed me out definitely of comparing myself to others, to kind of having this idea in my head that you had to know what was next. And now, um, all my jobs have really just fallen into my lap. I have, I've applied and worked really hard to get to some of the places that I thought I wanted, and those never happened or fell through. And I ended up in these wonderful opportunities that just kind of landed in my lap. And so I was like, well, I guess that was wasted worry. Of
Mm.
I'm it really did work out for me. and I put in a lot of effort, and it ended up that the stuff I really stressed about, I didn't need to. Um, so yeah,
Cernating, yes. Wasted worry. And hindsight is 2020, right? So we can now say, hey, past Megan, like you didn't need to worry about those
yeah,
things. Easy to say now, but
yeah, very.
fascinating to me. I do find that in life, I've seen it in my own life, that when we kind of give into this idea of like, I have to hustle and I have to grind and I have to make it
Mhm.
happen, that that type of energy, in my experience, has been kind of fruitless. But it's when I'm like, I don't know how to say, like open handed or
Mhm.
listening or trusting or something, that like things will come to me. So, what happened for you like right out of college? Were you like, I graduated, I got to apply to 50, 100, that's a great number.
Yeah, that's the
Fifty
exact
hundred
number I applied
companies,
to, 50,
50,
Um,
100. Okay.
yeah. How did you
No
know?
kidding. Okay.
So I graduated, and then I was working as a tutor part time, and I was applying. So the fall after I graduated, I was applying to PhD programs for neuropsychology and those type of programs. I applied to 50, 100, however many.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly 50, 100. Okay.
and I didn't get in. And I was like, well, what am I going to do now? So the next fall, I I think the next fall I had started working at a psychiatric clinic doing data entry. Um, and I applied to more programs, and I went back to Vanguard to help with some of their summer research program with one of the professors. Um, and and so I had a little bit more experience on my CV, and so I thought this time I'll get in. um, and I applied, I think, 3 different years. They might be getting confused. But I think the third round that I applied to these type of programs, I did get like second on the wait list at one. I got interviews at a couple. Um, and ultimately, I just didn't get the spots. Um, and looking back, I feel like I don't know how well I would have exceeded in those programs, not based on intelligence or anything, but because even now, like I do struggle with that perfectionism and am more on the anxious side with my work and everything. Um, and I've come a long way, but I think that's just kind of how my brain is wired. Um, and so it maybe those programs would have worked out and would have been great. Um, and maybe ultimately they probably would have been like too intense of like expecting, like pulling out that perfectionist side of me, where it would have been hard to deal with. I think academically, like I could do those kind of things, but I just tend to be a little bit more on the anxious side, and I know that about myself. So I try to set myself up to succeed now, where I try not to put myself in situations where I don't like need to be if I know they're going to be stressful. And I think those programs ultimately would have been. I might have been able to do it, but they might have been really hard years for me. So looking back, I'm not disappointed with myself of not getting in. I will make jokes about my A minus, but but I'm not ultimately like disgruntled that I didn't get into PhD programs. Like that was my first plan, and I thought if I didn't get that, the world would fall apart for me. Um,
Has it?
it is not.
Oh,
um,
okay.
It's like, I love my life now and I love the job opportunities I've had. I think it is a much better plan than what I had created originally. Um, I started fostering a service dog for a program, and that led me to become a trainer for that program, which is not something I had once considered before in college. But, it just seemed like a good opportunity. So I applied to do it and I got it. And then it turned out that I had a talent for it. I really enjoyed it. It kind of mixed like the animal world with the psychology world. Service dogs are for people with disabilities. So it's about being able to understand and relate to people with disabilities and see how we can improve their lives with these dogs. And then you also get, the dog side of training, of raising them. So those combined was a great job for me. And that really did just fall in my lap. And I had moved to New Hampshire to do that. And I was in a really small town where I didn't really know people. So the environment was a little bit difficult and isolating. And someone who already struggled with depression and anxiety, that was difficult. So I decided to move back here, even though I left the job. Here being California.
Yes.
And then I ended up working with a detection dog going into junior high and high schools, looking for substances. Yeah.
Oh, we're talking about a drug sniffing dog?
Mm-hmm. Like a drug sniffing dog, yeah.
This episode just keeps getting more controversial as we go. Okay.
I know. You're going to have to put a big warning label.
Yeah, explicit. Okay.
And,
detection dog.
Yeah. And I enjoyed the people aspect of that job, going into the schools. It wasn't just being like some harsh person going in and trying to get people in trouble. A lot of kids actually love seeing the dog because everybody loves a dog. And I liked being able to kind of interact with people, with the dog, and educate. The job itself, I know this is going to be controversial too. Saying online, I really just wasn't great at the job. The actual sniffing part of the job, it was very different than service dogs. And it's one of those things that's very niche, and having been trained, my brain trained in one way with dogs, going into a different job with them, I just wasn't succeeding. And I didn't even that wasn't even something I felt bad about, actually, because I know it wasn't something that I was it wasn't one of those things where it was second guessing so much. Am I good? Am I not? Am I making this up? I was like, no, this job just isn't for me. And so
I think totally makes sense. Yeah, it sounds like such a different role to be training a detection dog.
Yeah.
And going into schools versus training a dog to help people who have disabilities. Yeah.
Yeah. And I loved my employers. They were great. But I just needed to move on from that job. And then I ended up applying to a part-time job at an animal shelter in my city. And I got that. And I really enjoyed it. I was a caretaker. So I was on the team that was doing basically everything from taking care of the animals to doing adoptions, to helping out in the behavior department. And 2 months in, there were full-time positions that opened up, and I was hired for that. And so I was there for 2 years. And I really loved that job. I never thought, like, in college when I was applying for PhD programs, because I thought my worth was coming from intellectual stuff, that I would end up, being so happy working in an animal shelter. But it's great. It's still a very demanding job, physically, mentally, everything. But it's kind of where I've really grown and succeeded. And a new shelter opened up in our area where they were starting from the ground up. And I applied and was able to move up to the behavior and rescue specialist position. Um, so I feel very lucky that I've gotten the opportunity to grow in this industry. Um, and all and so I feel like all the prior experiences really played a part in me getting to where I am now. Everything fell into place. I got my degree and tutored, and then started working different animal jobs until I got to this one. And those experiences have really helped me in my job, with like the people aspect of matching people with the right animal, with being able to educate, being able to help train new employees. So I feel like everything has just led up to this and been a great opportunity. And I never thought any of these jobs is where I would be at, but ultimately it's probably like the best for me. I get to use some of my psychology knowledge and in all my dog experience, and it's really fun. I'm sorry, did I say the F word again?
And oh my god, this would be
Wow.
another. Yeah, this
Yeah.
episode is just
Really
so off the rails. Yes, fun. Okay, fun is important. Like,
Yeah.
I've even been reflecting the past few months, like modifying my little YouTube beliefs on our
hmm
channel of like high school and college should be times of fun.
hmm
So thinking about it is so controversial to use that word, but um, I'm really struck by how you spent 2, maybe 3 years applying for jobs and looking for that next step that was like maybe more of a straight line from
hmm
I majored in this degree,
hmm
I'm interested in the brain, therefore perhaps I should apply for PhD programs related to neuropsychology or other
Yeah.
field. For people watching who aren't familiar with those fields, the programs that Megan is talking about are extremely competitive, like notoriously competitive. And it's impressive that you got waitlisted and interviewed in that process. And I'm guessing that was very difficult to be working at that for 2 or 3 years and not get into a program. What I find amazing in hindsight is that I think you said you started fostering
hmm
a dog, and then all of this kind of grew out of that experience.
hmm
It seems like sometimes in life we gain experiences, we gain skills, we notice what we find fulfilling or what we enjoy, maybe even fun, dare I say it.
hmm
And as we kind of follow that, things open up, opportunities come our way. And I mean, when you look back on it now, I know this is hindsight, right? But when you say that things fell into your lap, like, are there any particular moments that come to mind where something kind of fell into your lap more easily than like what you were striving for really hard?
Yeah. Um, so when I was fostering that first service dog, I was applying to a lot of research assistant jobs. So anything at like universities or even hospitals that had a research program, because that would give me experience to get into a program, right? So I was researching jobs. I was working really hard at resumes and CVs and applying, and I had interviews at some of them. And ultimately, they went with other candidates. but I was putting a lot of time and effort into getting to those places. And then I was talking with the director of the service dog place I was working at, and I was like, I am wondering if you guys have some kind of like a case manager type of person. I have my psychology degree. I love your program. And she's like, no, we don't really have any right now for that type of stuff. And then a couple weeks later, she actually called me and was like, hey, this isn't exactly what you were asking for, but we have a trainer position open in New Hampshire. Would you be interested? And I didn't really apply for that. It just was a conversation. And so I still interviewed with the people running that location and I got hired. But that was like one question that led me to the job, basically, where I had been spending hours and hours applying to these different research assistant positions, anything in the psychology world. And none of that came to fruition. And then I reached out and said, hey, I, like this program and I love fostering with you guys. Do you have a job opening? And 2 weeks later, I get a call. Sure.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I think, well, I have a lot of thoughts about this, but I tend to say to students, all experience is good experience. Mm-hmm. And I know it sounds like a cliche, like everybody says that, but like, maybe everybody says that, but like, I do genuinely believe that all experience is good experience. And so you were fostering, mm-hmm. and then you had a conversation, mm-hmm. related to that. And what's interesting to me about the conversation and how it opened up an opportunity is that I think sometimes when we're in high school and we're looking for a job, when we're in college or we're, post-grad and we're looking for a job, we think that the way to get the door open is to kind of force the door open by sending out 40 resumes a day. And like, sometimes that does work. A lot of the time it's more about relationship and conversation and connections. Mm-hmm. And you were willing to just have a conversation with a person who was familiar with you. And the immediate answer was no.
Yeah.
But it planted a seed that you didn't even know to ask about.
Yeah.
And she kept you in mind. And then there was this other opportunity 2 weeks later, and like you were open to that. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of like I don't know how to say it, but it's sort of not what we would expect, I think, mm-hmm. when we are kind of like newly in that world of applying to jobs and trying to find a job.
Yeah.
Where did you get that idea to talk with her and have that conversation?
Just didn't really come from anywhere. I just was frustrated at not getting the other job opportunities. And I did really like working with the dogs. And I had conversations with her in the past because she's who I would talk to about how the training was going. And I would send her videos, and I've gotten really good feedback from her. And so I knew like she trusted my work. And I was like, well, I like it. Like none of the other doors open, so I might as well ask.
Yeah, I love it. It takes some boldness and some risk to just ask.
Yeah. Definitely. It's definitely scary to put yourself out there and ask. But it pays off sometimes.
Apparently. Yeah. And it sounds like it's just sort of like from there, more opportunities have opened up. Mm-hmm. And as you were naming those and explaining those, have those all been opportunities that like opened up and you applied, or was it like someone knew of you and just kind of plugged you into the position, or like how did that work?
So after I left the service dog organization, I was applying once again to more research jobs. Mm-hmm. Because the service dog world is kind of small, and the organization I worked for was a little different because they didn't require you to have years of experience to work there. But a lot of service dog organizations are in that loop of you need years of experience to apply. And it's that age old, how do I get experience if you're requiring experience?
Yes.
So I went back to applying for research positions, and I was just all the time looking online at different jobs. And then I would also look sometimes at other, dog type of jobs. And one popped up for this detection dog agency. And I was like, they're not requiring you to have worked in the field before. Mine as well. Um, so I emailed them and I heard back like 2 hours later, asking me to interview because, I had working dog experience and I had a good CV and all of that, or resume. And so that one, I got like hired on the spot basically. And it's funny because I feel like I can picture in my head like rooms connected to each other, and like there's like a straight line of open doors through the rooms, and then to the side there's like closed doors, and each one I'm like going to the closed door and trying to open it. And then I'm like, well, I guess I'll go over here and just walk right through that door. And I feel like multiple times I went to the closed door and was like really trying to get in, and I couldn't. And then there was an open door that whole time that I just completely ignored because it's not what I envisioned for myself. But it turns out if you like go through that door that's just open, it's much easier. So
Wait a minute. We need to unpack this metaphor for about an hour or two, Megan, because I feel like it's
I'm
really
a very
powerful.
visual person, and so when I'm thinking about these type of things, like I'll get those images in my head. Like I haven't thought of that before, but it just popped in my head of like, wow, that's the perfect image.
It is, and I love it. And it's often the case in therapy that I'm using a very similar image when
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking with folks about
Yeah.
their worries about the future and
Mm-hmm.
the jobs they're applying for, or what are they going to do. Um, this metaphor of like a hallway and there's doors, and yeah, you were saying basically that you were trying to like beat down the closed door
Mm-hmm.
rather than just looking for the door that was already open that you could walk
Yeah.
through. Speaking very metaphorically and abstractly here, why do you think you were not able to see the open door that was available to you?
I think I had this idea in my head for so long that psychology is what I'm supposed to do. Just because I spent so much time in college and doing some summer research programs, that that's just kind of what I assumed I was supposed to do. Um, and I didn't know that I had talent outside of that. And so I was kind of um, limiting myself because I was worried I wouldn't be good at other things. I thought this was what I was supposed to do. Um, and then, after so many rejected applications, I started to think maybe it's not meant for me if none of the doors are opening.
Mm. Yeah, so you had this idea that makes complete sense to me from the student perspective of like, I have a degree in this. I was interested in a subsection of that, which is the
Mm-hmm.
brain and neuropsychology or neuroscience.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, I should go to grad school for that. And that's just sort of the most logical, sensible, straight path from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And because of that, well, first off, it sounds like you were also underestimating yourself a little bit, if it's okay that I say that. As someone who's known you very well.
I've been
It
told
sounds like,
that. Don't worry.
okay. It sounds like it was hard for you to see your strengths and your ability to contribute
Mm-hmm.
aside from the degree that you had. And I mean, there is research suggesting that women also are more likely, we are more likely to underestimate
Mhm.
ourselves. There's some research suggesting that like women will only apply to a job if they exactly meet all the criteria.
Mhm.
Um,
Don't worry, I've seen the research.
oh, you have? Okay. Sorry. I don't mean
No,
to.
I'm just saying, like, I like, even with all of that information in my head, I still don't, like,
Oh, sure.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I would probably do the same thing now. Right.
yeah,
But it's like knowing the information is not transformation. Right. But, yeah, it's just an interesting, like, what is that?
yeah,
I think it's a power thing. But, yeah, I think sometimes we think, oh, like I went to school for this, therefore there has to be this straight line from point A to point B in terms of what I do
mhm,
after school. And it seems like the reality for most people is it's more like a dashed line, a dotted line, or a totally squiggly line
mhm,
of like that can come in handy what you studied. The skills you've gained from your education can come in handy.
mhm,
They can open a door. And it's also about who you are and what you're interested in and what you enjoy, what you find fulfilling.
mhm,
And not to be mystical about it, but I do think life has a way of just kind of guiding us and opening
mhm,
up opportunities that we weren't thinking about that are unexpected.
yeah. And then I think in terms of, like, society's expectations too, like, it was never a question for me of if I was going to college. It was like, that's the next step, you know? I was, because I was in those, like, AP classes and stuff, it was always, what college are you going to? Not so much what are you doing, it's what college. And so then after college, it was, what grad school are you going to? Um, and
People
for
were
those,
asking you,
hmm?
people were asking you, like, what grad school are you going to?
Some were, yeah. Um, and then I think I also put that pressure on myself. Um, and then, but I would like to say that college is not for everybody, especially like in the animal shelter industry I'm in. I have supervisors that didn't go to college or they didn't complete college, and they've been in the industry for a long time and are super successful, and they are super knowledgeable and great. And they didn't have to go to college to end up where they are. I did go to college and ended up here. So I don't think everybody, especially in high school, has to worry so much about, like, am I getting a degree to do a job in the future? Like, there's multiple paths to a lot of these jobs that are out there. And if you don't, go to college, or maybe you're going through a hard time and you physically or mentally can't do that, that's okay. Like, you're still going to get to where you need to go.
Thank you for saying that because it's really important for people to know like college really isn't for everyone in the
Mhm,
way that we all learn differently, we all grow differently, we are kind of wired and designed differently, and we're going to find different paths. And it's possible for people to end up at the same point
mhm,
or get there by different paths. It's not like there's one trail,
yeah.
you know. I think sometimes as students, we think of it one to one. Like, if I want that job, I have to take this one path.
Mhm,
But if you want that job, there can be multiple paths to get there.
mhm,
And a job is not a holy grail. A job is just sort of like a bracket holder of what you do for a season of your life. You know, like people get jobs for various reasons. I mean,
yeah.
pragmatically, it can be to pay the bills, but hopefully there's a level of interest and passion and fulfillment as well. But it's like you can have a job and then you can have it for a while, and there can be things you like and things you dislike, and you can move on,
Mhm,
you can do something different. So I just love that you're an example of like thinking more flexibly and more openly about what this can look like, and that it can be really unexpected what it looks
mhm.
like. I mean, there's also a big conversation right now about college and the
Mhm.
value of a college degree, which
Yeah.
I don't want to get too philosophical here, but like, I guess the controversial question I want to ask, because we're just getting as controversial as possible here, but like, do you regret going to college? That's
You are getting controversial.
what I'm here for.
Um, Personally, I don't regret it because I made great friendships. And I had great relationships with my professors. There's one that I still see like at least once a month, usually more. Um, and I think those relationships have really helped me grow and be the person I am. Um, so I don't regret going. I don't think it's so I don't regret it, but I don't think I necessarily needed it in where I came out. Um, working in jobs that don't really require it. Like they're always like a plus on a resume or something, but they're not required. So I think it was worth it for the relationships, but not necessarily the degree title.
Yeah, that makes sense to me because college is a place where you form those relationships, whether it's with like friends or with professors, other connections that you make
Hmm.
that you maybe would not have had access to had you not gone.
Yeah.
And it does sound like a lot of the jobs you've had post college didn't require your degree. Do you think that your degree at all helped get those jobs, or are you not sure? Or no?
Um, the first full time job I had at the psychiatric clinic as data entry, yes. Um, Having that psychology degree was needed. Um, the other ones, I think the current position I'm in, because it's a lot more of an office job than just being like a kennel attendant kind of person, where I'm reaching out to people to help our organization, to help pull our animals. I think you know, it does help that I have a degree to my name. And I think the skills I learned in college, the public speaking has been a really great resource for me. I was a TA and I taught a few lectures. Um, and I gave like poster presentations. And so those skills that I got, being able to communicate my research, really, I think has helped me be able to talk to people, um, be able to educate. Um, and so some of the skills are very transferable. Um, so I think they're a plus, but not necessarily needed.
That makes sense. Okay, so a lot of the skills have carried over in a
Yeah.
helpful way. Public speaking, communicating, being able to educate people
Hmm.
sounds helpful,
Hmm.
maybe not necessary in some ways, but they've been
Yeah.
an advantage.
I think it's an advantage.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. I think sometimes the way that I might think about some of this is like, it matters who we become through a process.
Hmm.
So it's not necessarily that I value a degree on paper or a title, but I value a person and like who they have become through their process, whether their process is what they went through in their 3 years of college and those years that you went through of trying to apply to PhD programs. Like all of that to me is formation.
Yeah, exactly.
And for other people, formation is dropping out of high school and the experiences that they have because of that, or after high school, going to trade school or working jobs or becoming an entrepreneur out of the gate. Like
Hmm.
It matters who people become.
Yeah. And so that's
Yeah.
why the question of like, do you regret college or that kind of thing is difficult because like I have learned so much in every stage of my life. I don't regret anything that happened. Um, would I do things differently? Maybe. I don't know. But I don't regret becoming the person I am today through those experiences.
Yeah. Well, you're such a wonderful person, so I would hate if you were to regret who you became. I'm glad to hear you
Thank
say
you.
that. Um, is there anything you would have done differently? Just to
Um,
up the ante on the controversy. I just wanna
yeah.
keep raising the bar.
Um, that's hard because like I might change taking so much time applying to PhD programs and jobs um, in that one field and maybe trying to like gain more experience elsewhere. Um, I probably still would have tried at least one time, like one fall, to get into PhD programs and continue my education. But I think if I felt at the time that like I did made my best effort doing that, and none of those doors opened, I might try doing something else. Of course, hindsight's 2020. I remember back then being like, "There's nothing else I can do. What else am I good at?"
Yeah, there is
But
nothing else in the universe except going to a PhD
yeah,
program.
right.
Yeah.
Um, but like, if I had known, I could have just started working at like a shelter, and like that would have been great. I would have done that.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Were you fostering, like, when you went through that first round of applications or not yet?
not yet.
Okay. What led you to even start doing that then? Fostering?
Um, it just seemed like a unique experience. I love dogs, and the the training aspect seemed really interesting to me. I liked learning, like just spending some time researching and learning all that service dogs could do, which, by the way, is almost anything. um, and so, getting that like hands-on training experience just seemed really almost scientifically fun. um, and then I don't know. It was just something that seemed interesting.
Yeah, I mean, my bias, of course, is that I can kind of hear what you're saying and I can connect the dots between, like, psychology research and,
Mhm.
like, how we train various animals to do various things and the behavioral aspect of it,
Yeah,
um, conditioning and reinforcement and extinguishing and all of that. But I'm so glad that you found that.
yeah. It
And
really opened up a whole new world.
the whole new okay, sorry. So overthinking has been a main theme of like what we've been chatting about.
Mhm,
And you used this phrase earlier of like wasted worry, that there was a
mhm.
lot of wasted worry during college and the years after. And I'm curious where you're at with that nowadays. Like, would you say that you're still struggling with overthinking and wasted worry? Is it less? Is it more?
I've definitely improved. Um, I definitely still overthink things and am a little bit more anxious than needed sometimes. But I think the big difference is now that I can catch myself in that um, and attempt to walk myself through it sometimes of like, um, and de escalate before like it becomes something that like is really overwhelming. Um, it's still something in practice. So, I have my moments where I look back and I'm like, wow, I really didn't need to overthink that. That ended up fine. Um, but I also have been in therapy for a number of years and started on medication a long time ago. And that also changed my world. Um, but that could be a whole other episode. Um, and I've really gotten better at giving myself grace and learning the ability to think about, is this something that needs this much worry? Or can we just kind of cross that bridge when we get there?
One of the things with worry that I try to help people unpack when I work with them is that our beliefs about worry are actually really important. So if we believe that our worry is helping us, we will be more prone to worry, worry, worry.
Mm-hmm.
Versus if we believe that our worry is, for example, counterproductive or unhelpful, we will worry less.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe that your worry is helpful?
Well, there's the bell curve of anxiety. You're supposed to
Okay.
get a nice medium.
Oh, in the middle, right? Because
Yeah.
it's like at least adaptive and helpful. I mean, context dependent. If you're like on the sofa watching Netflix and you're like in the middle of the bell curve of worry, I'm like,
Yeah. I think overall, I found that I kind of know my limit of where worry goes into counterproductive.
okay.
And there is that spectrum of like, I know I need to think this through. But then at a certain point, it's like I'm overthinking and making myself a mess.
How do you know when you're overthinking?
I can't let it go so much. If it's, um, if I start to feel more of the physical symptoms of, feeling that anxiety in my chest and the repetitive thoughts on a loop and that kind of stuff, I know that that's more unhealthy worry. That's more anxious worry. And that's when I tell myself that we kind of need to de-escalate this mental, like internal dialogue. Um, because at a certain point for me, if I don't catch it early, then I can't stop it. And then I kind of go down a whole, like, I like, because I'm more of the neuroscience person, the term I just use with myself is like, my amygdala is activated. And I know, such a nerdy
Love
thing.
this. It's great. I love
But
it.
like, I'll point out, I'm like, my amygdala is activated. I need to like calm down because like my worry almost starts to turn into like panic. Not like panic attacks, but like that more urgent panic feeling, even if there's nothing I can do. It's just kind of more of a anxious thought that I've attached to that isn't really consequential to anything I'm actually doing. That's when, like, I know it's not helpful at all.
The amygdala being the emotional center of the brain and where we have fear response. Well, in part, it's involved in fear responses as well as other parts of the brain. But I love that you're able to talk yourself through that. And
Sometimes.
sounds like sometimes, I was going to say sometimes, that was my next word, Megan. I'm listening. Sometimes able to catch yourself, sometimes able to talk yourself down from that. And it makes a lot of sense to me that if that continues for too long, it can kind of spiral out of control or beyond the point of being able to de-escalate.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate that you have a way of understanding that and explaining that to yourself. And I also heard you say that you'll notice in your body,
Mhm.
particularly like in your chest.
Psychologists love when you know that, huh?
We
Mhm.
love it. That was going to go on a whole thing. Maybe I, but I think when people talk about overthinking, because that is a word that a lot of people use right now, that is something that so many people are struggling with. And I think when we are overthinking, we are caught in our thoughts and we're caught in negative thought loops. And to me, that also signals that we're not actually enough in our body
Mhm.
or in our will, which is where we make choices, we make decisions, and our body and our will take action. And so sometimes what I see when people are overthinking is that it's actually that we need to make a decision or take an action
Mhm.
instead of getting in the negative thought loop.
Yeah.
Mm. Or, I mean, I'm very accustomed to also helping people if they are stuck in their thoughts to modify those thoughts so that they're more hopeful and more accurate. But I think for a lot of people, it's that we need to also get back into our body as well.
Mhm. I've been told that. I struggle with it though.
Oh, yeah. What's been hard about it?
Um, I think I've I just am more detached from like my brain and my body. And so combining the two and making that effort of doing things to kind of bring them together, um, I think those things you really have to slow down to do. It's those breathing exercises and grounding and like taking time to do those exercises, like let's feel my feet right now and move up. Or like I struggle with impatience, and don't make the time to kind of build those brain body connections so that when, you know, there's more anxious moments in life, it's easier to already be grounded. Um, and so I don't know. I think it's just the impatience. And so I know, do I do it? Not really, but I know that like those daily exercises or practices of grounding and being in your body does help with your anxious thoughts, being able to regulate yourself. Um, just not something I focused on yet.
Yeah, that's okay. In my experience, working with folks, and then my just noticing myself
Hmm.
and being a lifelong learner that I am.
Hmm. I still look at
I
research articles for fun. It's okay.
I love this. I love that. Um, I think being in touch with our body is different for everyone. So for some people, certain breathing exercises are really helpful, like box breathing,
Mhm.
or I sometimes call it combat breathing, where we double the exhale, or progressive muscle relaxation. We start at our feet and then we go up the muscle
Mhm.
groups of our body and we relax all the muscle groups. For some people, those things are helpful. And for other people, it's just really not the way that they get in touch with their body. For me, what I find helpful is like just trying to have an awareness of how my body feels at any moment in my day, not constantly, but like before our call right now, I'm always a little nervous before a call.
Yeah,
And
you're gonna
so
be
I was
YouTube.
really just, what's that?
You're gonna be YouTube famous. Of course, you're nervous.
So famous. And as you know, that's always been my dream.
Yes.
No, I'm like such a private person. This is my introvert nightmare. But, I'm like, so I was noticing before our call, like some tightness down in my stomach. And it's not that like I got down on the floor and did this formal like breathing exercise, but just sort of like noticing that. And then what does that mean? Well, it probably means that my body is coming online in a way to prepare me for this.
Mhm.
And I sort of told myself, like, You talk to people all the time. This is going to come naturally to you. And I noticed even before we started recording, you and I were just chatting. We started laughing a little bit about just funny things that we were joking about. And I noticed that that tension in my body kind of decreased as we were laughing
Mhm.
because laughter and joy is such a really safe experience. But my point in this is that it's different for everyone. For me, it's just like an awareness of my body throughout my day.
Mhm.
It takes a lot for me to get to the point where I'm like, I need to do progressive muscle relaxation. I
Yeah.
do have those days, um, especially at the end of like a difficult work day, or maybe I've heard a difficult story. I will do things like that to help
Mhm.
myself regulate. But for me, it's like going for a run, riding my bike, going to the gym. Um, I think everyone just has to find it, kind of find their own unique version
Yeah.
of being in their body and relaxing in their body. For some people, it's like snowboarding, it's like, it could be anything.
Mhm.
I think sometimes people are kind of have this idea that it has to be like the bubble bath or something.
Yeah.
But it's just different for everyone. For some people, I know it's like putting on music and going into the kitchen and cooking.
Mhm.
And that's like their zone. But that's just me trying to say, like, it doesn't have to be like a grounding
Yeah.
exercise or
Like a formal time.
breathing exercise. Yeah. There are people that find those really helpful, and I do teach those as well. And sometimes I use them, and sometimes I do something else, but it's just finding what works for you. So I don't know. I mean, do you have anything physical that you enjoy, like just going for a walk, walking a dog, petting a dog?
Um, One of my favorite things to do is like go to the lake with a dog, with my dog, and not even necessarily like do a lot of exercise. I can like stay in the same 10-foot radius and just kind of be there. The water's relaxing, um, and it's just a relaxing experience. So I like doing that. And then a friend is in a softball league, so it's pretty small. So I've gone to a couple of the practices and realized that I actually like playing it. Um, so just finding some like random, just outside things to do. Um, I like doing like I'm not the person who likes going to the gym to lift weights because I don't like being in like the stationary, like inside working out kind of setting. I would rather be outside and being like doing something more active where I'm moving as opposed to just having to be in my thoughts so much, if that makes sense.
I have a news flash for you, which is that everything you just described, it's going to be so controversial. Megan, are you ready?
I don't know. We've had a lot of controversial moments.
Every- Everything you just described of like going to the lake with a dog,
Is that
enjoying being outside.
grounding?
Yes, it is. Playing softball, I mean, that's a physical activity that I
Hmm.
think is getting you more in your body as I listen to you
Hmm.
describe it. Yeah, sitting in nature, it's grounding, it's relaxing. I mean, it's not it I feel like sometimes people overcomplicate it, right? And
Hmm.
you've already found things that get you in your body. I don't know if you'd use that language for it, but um, to me, those are just such beautiful, beneficial things that you're
Well, thanks.
doing. But yeah, I mean, I guess I got on this soapbox because, talking about overthinking, sometimes it's that we are really caught in our thoughts. Our amygdala is overactivated, as you said, and we have to send messages to our brain, if you want to put it that way, that we are safe and that we can relax and get more energy into our body and perhaps into other areas of our brain as well. Um, and one of the ways we do that is by going outside and feeling safe and being in green spaces or being near a calm lake. Or when we play sports, especially team sports, we have a sense of being with a team, being with other people. We've sort of evolved as a species to usually feel safer in a group, unless we're being excluded from that group, which is very threatening for us. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like you have found ways of doing that.
Yeah, I just never really thought about them as grounding. Um, but now I could throw that around. Thank you.
Do it. Tell everyone you're a grounding expert and you do it every day.
I have my grounding activity in 10 minutes. Sorry, guys, I can't do anything.
With a capital G, grounding. Yeah. I mean, the most formal way that therapists tend to teach grounding is like, and I teach it as well, like, what are 5 things that you see right now? What are 4 things you hear? What are 3 things that you're touching right now? What are 2 favorite scents? What's 1 favorite taste? And that is helpful. There's all sorts of nerdy neuroscience for you around that of like,
Yeah.
it does bring us back into the present moment. I don't know
Mhm.
if it's the somatosensory cortex or something, but um, activates the part of our brain that is more present oriented.
Mhm.
So that is sometimes helpful for people. But grounding doesn't have to look like that. I
Mhm.
guess that's my point.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah. I mean, when you go outside and you're near a lake, do you feel more in the present?
I do. Yeah. Um, and I'm able to just kind of observe everything um, without a lot of thoughts of like just kind of watching the water move and ducks go by and just kind of enjoy that without like the normal like thoughts going on, and it just kind of allows me to separate in a good way. So I guess that is grounding. Thank you. I really circled back there.
Yeah, I don't know how we got here, but I guess I'm just sort of trying to say you have found ways of grounding yourself and getting out of your own head and out of the overthinking by getting outside. And it sounds like that makes you more present oriented, which is a part of grounding, right?
Yeah,
So yeah, give yourself credit for that.
I'll try.
Yeah, and yeah, please try. And for anyone watching, like I guess the point is like find what works for you. And it could be different than what works for me or what works for Megan. And it could be different than what your therapist is trying to do. I feel really
Can
bad
I tell
saying
you a
that.
funny story?
Yes. Let me just add a disclaimer. I love therapists. I am a psychologist. I'm not trying to say anything bad about what your therapist is teaching you, but it's just people just need to find their own version of these
Mhm.
skills. Okay. Yes. What's up?
Going off of that, when I first started with the therapist I currently have, she was a newbie because that's what I could afford. She's great. I love her to death. Um, but since she was new and was still figuring stuff out too, we were just kind of both figuring it out together. It was great. She would have
Sure.
me do like the coloring pages and be like, "What does this color mean to you?" And I was like, "No." And
You're like,
that just
nah, dude.
reminds
This
me of
ain't
you talking about like I teach these grounding things, but they don't work for everybody. she, we figured out that like that method of therapy was not for me.
that ain't it. You're not a what does this color mean to you person?
No, I'm not a like color and talk about it kind of person. No.
Yeah. I wonder what that would be. Maybe art therapy?
It was
So
more trying to create a conversation because I know this is a big surprise to you. I wasn't the best talker in therapy to begin with. I know.
that genuinely is a surprise to me. I mean, you're
Really?
being so open today. Yeah. Why would I not be
This is
surprised by
years
that?
down the line, you know?
Okay.
My therapist
Was it
really
hard?
opened me up.
Okay. Was it hard for you at first to open up and talk?
Yeah, and it wasn't necessarily that I didn't want to talk. Like I knew I needed to be there because I was really struggling. and I wanted to be there and talk. I just wasn't used to talking about what was going on in my brain. Um, that I didn't know how to translate my thoughts into words. Um, and so I really had to grow that skill. Like I could present my poster presentation on, you know, on all the research I've done, no problem, right? I was great at communicating those facts, not necessarily facts, but what we had done. Um, but it was being able to put my own personal experience into words that was a whole new thing for me. And I didn't know that was something you had to kind of, a skill you had to create. Um, so that was, I think, one of the biggest things I've gotten from therapy is being able to take my brain, put it into words.
Therapy is very confronting in that way because it's hard to avoid doing that, especially one-on-one therapy, right?
Yeah.
Like it forces you to put words to your own experience and have another person, hopefully, who provides a positive experience of receiving you in that
Mhm.
and creating trust and safety. And I think, my bias is that I love therapy, having done it for more than 20 years. I
Mhm.
also feel like part of why I'm out here in the wild, wild west of YouTube and why I created my anxiety program that I have that people can enroll in is because I saw that, well, there's a lot of problems in the mental health system. Let's put it that way.
Mhm.
I could go on. That's a whole other
Yeah.
5-hour conversation, but like the mental health system gets in people's way. And then if they're coming into therapy with anxiety, especially social anxiety, but any anxiety, it's almost like the anxiety prevents them from being able to participate in therapy and in treatment. Where I was just seeing people not being able to access therapy, but then also um, they would have so much anxiety about going or being there or how to talk to me or someone else. And yeah, so I created my anxiety program because it's like, well, I could just give people all these skills and all this language, like that they can immediately have access to. So, anyway, I appreciate the transformation that you've gone through. And this is me also just sort of thinking out loud about how can we creatively help people through different pathways, right? Because not everyone can access therapy either, or they don't want to talk to a stranger or have that awkwardness or don't feel comfortable or can't find a person who's
Mhm.
willing to kind of work it out with them the way that your therapist was.
Yeah. Because I did learn too, because I had seen some other therapists before this one, kind of sporadically, and they never lasted long because of my difficulty explaining my experience, and kind of the depression that I was feeling. Um, they were also newer, and I had gone in saying I have these problems, and then in our sessions I was like, I don't know. And because I had a hard time explaining and discussing, they felt like I didn't actually need the help, that I was kind of taking the space that somebody who needed it more could use. They asked if I could just continue so they could see someone else. This was at the University Counseling Center where there is, a high demand for therapists because college is such a hard time. And I was like, well, I don't really know what to talk about. So, okay. Um, and so it wasn't until I had found this therapist who was very patient and stubborn, um, that um, I really was helped in being able to discuss what was going on and form those words, to really share kind of the severity of my depression and what I was going through. Whereas like it was kind of dismissed before because I wasn't like really able to label it. I feel like that's a whole other tangent too.
It's an important point though, because therapy is very verbal. It's very verbally loaded, especially talk therapy, which is
Yeah.
kind of the most common traditional therapy. There's other forms of therapy, but it's very verbally loaded. And so, um, for people who have a hard time putting words to their experience, it can look like they don't need it as much, or they're not struggling, or it just can be misunderstood in so many different ways.
Hmm.
And I'm glad that you found a very patient, stubborn, is that what you said?
I don't get away
Right.
with stuff with my therapist.
Oh, that's a good skill for a therapist to have.
It is. It's also frustrating
So
in a
glad.
good way.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're frustrated.
Thank you.
Healthy frustration.
Yes.
Okay, so I know you've talked about anxiety and depression.
Mhm.
Have you experienced those as just sort of like two interconnected aspects of what you go through, or do you experience them as like distinctly like this is my depression showing up, this is my anxiety showing up? What have those look like for you?
Um, I struggle a lot more with depression than anxiety historically. I'll have like true depressive episodes. Not I know, especially with social media now, everything is just kind of like given these like labels of, oh, I'm so depressed or anxious, and it's like not actually like the diagnosable stuff. It's like I'm experiencing normal human emotion, and people
Some
will put
sadness
like
or yeah.
psychological labels on them. But like I have experienced like like true depression that's extremely difficult. And so that's more my predominant struggle throughout my life. And then the anxiety, um, I feel like if I could have depression by itself, but I feel like anxiety once I get anxious, um, and I don't have it's definitely more of the depression, but when I start with anxiety, I feel like most of the time that leads into depression. Um, but my depression doesn't always lead to anxiety, if that makes sense. Because the anxious thoughts of, well, I guess they kind of overlap. Um, it's so hard because you have those like overthinking threads of, am I good enough? Um, is am I gonna find this right job? Those kind of things. Um, those lead me into depression of I am not good enough. Um, I am worthless. Those kind of things. So I feel like those anxious thoughts lead into that depressive episode. Whereas if I'm depressed, I more so lack the energy to then have those like mental spirals all the time, if that makes sense. I feel like I'm
Yeah.
rambling, but
No, it makes sense to me. I think it's complex how
it's
anxiety and
very
depression
complex. Yeah.
interacts. Yeah. And it sounds like for you, the predominant mode has been depression.
Mhm.
And by that, we mean like major depression with a capital M and a capital D, which is actually the diagnosis, right? And that you've had distinct periods of depressive
Mhm.
episodes, which, as you point out, is different from someone who might be feeling depressed and using that language on social media and then it kind of passes,
Mhm.
it's not a temporary thing. And um, it makes sense to me when you said your anxious thoughts can lead into depression, but your depression doesn't always lead into anxiety.
Mhm.
Anxiety is more of a frenetic type of energy, type of state. And
Mhm.
often when we're depressed, we don't have the energy to be worked up into an anxious frenzy.
Yeah.
Um, But it makes sense to me what you said about how your anxiety can lead into your depression,
Hmm.
especially with those thought patterns. And am I good enough is one that I hear a lot from people. Can you tell me about the am I good enough struggle?
Um, yeah, I don't. It seems so simple to me, like it doesn't need an explanation of like that's just the thought. But I think it's compounded by like seeing other people, and their achievements, um, especially since growing up and then going into college, I was so academically minded. Like the success on paper kind of meant so much to me. Like my friends going to become doctors and that kind of stuff. And I'm like, I work at an animal shelter. um, but, and so there's moments where, you know, even if it's not necessarily um, paper, but like, am I liked enough? Um, those kind of things, that all leads to it's the comparison with other people, I think, really at the root of the am I good enough discussion in my head. Um, but yeah.
So, am I good enough has a root of comparison with other people, the jobs that they're getting, also is kind of in it, the DNA of am I good enough can also come from school, where it's like grades, GPA, and maybe even student comparison. I mean, I don't know. I see how it's kind of baked into school, is what I'm saying. But have you found any way out of that yet, or are you still in the am I good enough comparison struggle?
It's funny that you say that because it's not something I've thought about really. But now that you've mentioned it and I'm talking about it, I feel like I don't really, that's not one of the anxious or depressed thoughts I go to as much anymore. Um,
But that's really important. Why do you think you don't go there as much anymore?
I think I truly enjoy my job and where I'm at in life now, that um, because I'm enjoying it, I don't worry about other people's perceptions as much.
It's like inherently so enjoyable for you that it matters less what other people would think about that.
Yeah, I'm not worried about stacking myself up against other people as much. I know I'm loved by the people that love me. I enjoy, my job. I enjoy being able to go to the lake and that kind of stuff where like I'm just at a really stable point in my life where I'm not as concerned about other people's perceptions. And that was always the root of am I good enough? It's kind of that whole perception piece.
So you're in a stable place right now where it's like, I enjoy my job. I know that my loved ones love me. I like going to the lake. You do sound like you're in a really stable, like secure place.
Hmm.
Is it that when the am I good enough thought would come in, is it that you were worried about how other people thought about you? Or was it you comparing yourself to other people, or both?
I think it was mostly about how other people saw me, that I wouldn't be well, and the good enough ties into worthiness, right? Am I am I good enough? Am I worthy of their attention and love and that kind of stuff?
It's a matter of how other people would think about you, how
Hmm.
other people would perceive you, how they
Yeah.
would see you. And in their eyes, am I good enough? Am I worthy
Hmm.
of love?
Yeah.
So, what has made this less of a concern for you over time? Like, is it getting a job, like just really practically? I mean, the reason I say it that way is because we live in California, and Southern California, especially, is obsessed with like, one of the first questions people ask socially is, what do? You know?
Hmm. Um, Honestly, therapy and medication, great. Really helped.
Really?
Those
Give you a sense of stability?
mhm. Um, I think the therapy and medication allowed me to be more of myself, um, and be more confident in my self-growth. Um, that yeah, I just think that for me personally, um, I think like biologically I needed the medication. Um, and so that combination of therapy and medication um, really helped me be able to grow and experience life through more of a not even necessarily joyful lens all the time, but more of like a neutral lens without that base. Because I was going off of the baseline of depression and then going into more of a joyful state. That was more unusual. Whereas now, I am more at a happy baseline or joyful baseline where I am open to experiencing life through like a better lens than before the therapy and medication. I could not get to that place because I think my brain was limited in how it was processing everything. Um, and so, of course, just I think getting older, you learn more, have more experiences, and that helps. But yeah, I think those were the two big things.
Therapy and medication.
Yeah.
I'm such a fan of therapy that I haven't asked you about medication yet. I mean, and you did sort of explain already how it changed your baseline from having like a
Yeah.
default to defaulting to depression,
Mhm.
whereas it sounds like the combination of therapy and medication gave you a baseline of neutrality.
Yeah.
Um, what has been your experience, if you feel comfortable
Yeah.
talking about medication? Like some people have to go through a trial and error of
Mhm.
trying different ones. Was it that you found one off the bat that worked well for you? What's been your experience with medication?
So I went to my GP, my general practitioner first, like just general family medicine. And they started me on a medication. And it actually, a lot of people do have to go through trial and error. I went through trial and success. The first
Oh,
medication really did work for me, but the effects started to wear off a little bit. I think because I was on a lower dose. And I am actually thankful that my GP was somebody who recognized like it wasn't their specialty. And so they did refer me to a psychiatrist. Um, and they didn't just try to solve it themselves because it's not their specialty. Um, so I went to the psychiatrist and they just put me on a higher dose of what had worked. And there's been a little bit of trial and error with, becoming accustomed to medication um, and that kind of thing. Um, and I've had to go on meds for different things. Like I had terrible insomnia and stuff, so I had to get like a sleep med. And so there was still some of that trial and error of figuring out exactly what I needed, but I did pretty immediately feel the positive effects of them, that even with like one or two that had side effects, I knew that it was really helpful to have them overall, um, and didn't dissuade me.
okay. And kudos to your GP, as you said, for recognizing that referring you to a psychiatrist would probably be the most helpful thing. And also kudos to them for their willingness to try something for
Yeah.
you as a prescription. Do you remember if that was, I don't know if you're on the same medication now, but was that it? Anti-anxiety, antidepressant medication?
Yeah, it was an antidepressant. I'm still on it to this day. And it's still helpful. And I know there's a lot of stigma, especially in some cultures, of being on medication for mental health or even admitting there's mental health problems. And so I know it's not as accessible to everybody. But for me personally, that was the biggest help I've had. And if people are on the fence about, not wanting to have to rely on medication, that's what I hear a lot from like friends who have gone through this struggle too, is like they don't want to have to rely on something. And for me, I don't look at it that way of like, oh, I have to take this every day to be okay. Really, I know it allows me to be my best self, to not, it allows me to appreciate everything a lot better because I'm not at like a depressive baseline. I know how much harder it is to be at that baseline and do the same thing I'm doing now than to be at a better baseline because of medication. That I'm honestly just so much happier in life because of it. So I don't look at it as a negative of having to be on medication. I'm thankful I have the opportunity to, because it's really opened myself up to a better life.
So much for speaking to people who might be on the fence about medication too, because I think a lot of people can struggle with that, or their parents struggle with it. And I hear a lot of therapists say, like, oh, if you had diabetes, you would take medication for it. This is no different, like as a medical metaphor.
Yeah.
I also like to tell people who are on the fence, like, if you have access to whether it's your GP or it's a psychiatrist that you're referred to, or a nurse practitioner, psychiatric nurse practitioner, just go have a conversation with them about what your options can be with medication. If they write you a prescription, like, take it home, look it up online, do your homework. Yeah. That doesn't mean you have to fill that prescription. If you fill that prescription, it doesn't mean you have to take it. Like, there's a lot of people can take that process as slow as they're comfortable with. And even starting a medication doesn't mean you have to continue a medication. You can try a different medication. So, yeah, I really admire your willingness to go through that process and also to share about it as well, because I think a lot of people need to hear a non-scary example. That medication can be helpful, even if there's a side effect or two here or there. That it can just take the edge off of depression or anxiety, give you a neutral baseline and make life livable, right? Did you have any side effects? I thought you mentioned you had one or two.
I pretty much have vivid dreams every night from my medication. And so sometimes if it's like a bad dream, then it's a vivid bad dream. And so that's my biggest side effect. So sometimes, even though I'm sleeping, it's still not the best sleep because of it. But overall, it's worth it to me. My baseline is still higher. I'm able to experience things with more joy because my baseline is higher, that it's still worth it. I'm not concerned about that for me personally. And I think there is a lot of just what ifs when people take medications about, like, what if I have side effects? And it's something, there's so many different medications out there. It's not like there's only one option. Your psychiatrist is knowledgeable of all these medications, and you're able to try new ones if you need to. You're not locked into like one specific thing. And so it's about that communication with your psychiatrist and honesty of like, I'm experiencing these positive things, but the side effect, is there something to help with that, or should we change? It's just an ongoing conversation. Um, with other in That's with medications, not specifically for um, mental illness too, that you have to go through. Um, so for me, it's not really a concern.
Yeah. Okay, so that's interesting that even with the really vivid dreams, sometimes nightmares, you're like, this medication is worth it.
Hmm.
Like, it sounds like the benefits outweigh the side effects. Is that fair to
Yeah,
say? Okay.
definitely.
And it seems important too that when people have a prescription, whether it's for mental health or for anything health related,
Yeah.
not just psychotropic medication, which is mental health stuff, that we feel comfortable enough with the prescribing person that we feel like we can let them know our experience of that medication. And not that they have to be our best friend. Like, we don't have to feel,
No.
abundantly comfortable to tell them our whole life story, but we feel at least comfortable enough to say, hey, this is what I'm experiencing.
Mhm.
What can we do?
Yeah. You're
And
allowed
there's
to
a
fire
little,
your doctor if they're not having your best interest at heart.
go to someone else. Yeah. There's a little bit of a self advocacy piece in there, I
Mhm.
think, too, which can be hard to develop that muscle. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm hearing that, like, you have found an ability to do that.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um, so do you want to talk about the brain, Megan?
Sure.
I used to think that psychotropic medication, like, for example, like antidepressants, anti-anxiety medication, I used to think that it was helping the neurotransmitters in our brain, which it is often.
Mhm.
And I went to this anxiety training in the past couple years where they actually talked about neurogenesis, meaning that, like, it's actually helping develop new neuronal pathways in the brain
Mhm.
as well. I found that really fascinating.
Yeah, I've heard about that too. Because like in school, in our biopsych class, learning about specific areas of the brain, about what medication does, we touched on that lightly. Um, it's still one of those things of like, what exactly do these medications do? Like, here's some theories. Here's theories that
Yeah.
like we don't believe anymore, and so it's like the neurogenesis, thinking about how medication literally is opening up new pathways for you, um, and building on that is really cool. I'm excited to like the future, of research and what they learn about medication, because we know it's effective. For some people, it's just kind of figuring out the why. And I'm sure there's a lot more to it than neurogenesis too. And I'll be looking forward to learning. Keep me updated.
I'm not the expert, so you keep me updated because you love reading research. You still love reading research at this point?
I do. I'm still very much a nerd. I'll look up research even for my current job. It's not always used or anything, but it's fascinating to me. Um, there's a bunch of research on, lowering stress levels of animals in shelters and practices you can do with that. How animals being in the shelter affects their behavior afterwards. Those kind of stuff. I love it.
Oh, that's so great.
Yeah.
I hope that, like, given the path that you're on and you found what you really love to do, I hope that you will just remain open to related opportunities, even if it means staying in your current position, but like related opportunities to either use research in your current
Mhm.
role or conduct research in your current
Yeah,
role, anything like that. It could be cool.
it would be. I've
Yeah.
thought about it.
Okay. Well, I feel like part of what we touched on today is, like, we never know, right? We never
Mhm.
know what kind of unexpected things life might bring our way, and there might be an open door that we can't even see yet. Right?
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, we've been chatting for almost 2 hours, and I do have a final question that I tend to ask people. Before I ask my final question, is there anything else that we didn't touch on that you want to share, ask?
No, I think we covered a lot of ground sporadically. We covered a lot.
Exactly. Yeah, I've had fun if it's okay to say that. I don't know if it's okay to.
I think that's like the third or fourth time we've used the F word. Is that okay?
Oh my gosh. Um,
Can't take me anymore.
okay. So, final question is, what do you wish you knew when you were younger?
Um, I feel like it's very repetitive, seeing as we talked about it so much. But I really would tell myself that I don't need all the answers right away. I don't need to have everything figured out. It will come.
You don't need to have all the answers right away. You don't need to have it figured out. It will come.
Yeah.
Beautifully said.
Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. After we stopped recording, I was chatting with Megan about how weird it is to me that, we're having these conversations on YouTube on this channel about relatively dark topics, like anxiety, about depression, about medication, and all these mental health specific topics. And yet I have so much fun in these conversations as well. And as we said, that is the F word. But I do truly hope that that translates to you as you join us in watching these conversations. I hope that you have fun too. I hope that there's a lightheartedness that we can bring, and even a laughter and a joy that we can bring for you, with you, into conversations about mental health. And I also want you to remember too that, as I said at the beginning of this video, and I think I mentioned it in my conversation with Megan too, if you are struggling with overthinking and worrying about the future, you don't have to stay there. You don't have to stay stuck in that. You don't have to experience that forever. There are tools, there are skills, there are strategies that can help you. And Megan and I touched on some of those, but there are so many of those that can help you. And I teach them in my signature anxiety program. So if you're wanting help with anxiety, with overthinking, with worrying about the future, please know that you can move forward with the next steps in your education, in your friendships, in your future. And as we talked about with Megan, you can move forward, but you can also be present now in your life and actually enjoy it and actually have fun as well. So if you're wanting that help, check out the free training in the description and in the pinned comment below. Share it with your parents. Feel free to watch the training yourself as well. And I hope to see you in the program. All right. Peace.